All right. Well, I'm going to open us up with some prayer and then we'll dive into it. So, dear God, we just want to thank you for this day. I want to thank you for Ryan. I want to thank you for him being willing to come on the podcast today. I just pray that you direct our conversation. God, let it be glorifying to you. Let ourselves just sink out and let you be shown in the foreground, God, because this is all about you. We ask that you just bless this time. Let it reach the ears it's supposed to reach. And we love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, today on the dad shift, we have Ryan Howard. He is a husband, a dad, a firefighter, but most importantly, he's a follower of Christ. And he's kind of a personal mentor. He's been a reference, I think, on both my jobs. So that's cool. But also, he's just a really good guy to know. He's kind of a big deal in Longview. So I'll let him give a little bit of intro about himself, though. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tanner. A big deal in Longview is a stretch, but I certainly enjoyed being there. My name's Ryan Howard. I grew up in Longview, Texas, and from about as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a fireman. So my wife, Emily, and I have been married for, oh boy, this will be 15 years in December, and we still live here in Longview where I work. Emily stays home and homeschools our awesome kiddos. We have 3 kids. Hudson is just turned 11. Harrison will be 9 in a couple of weeks. And Carly Joe is our youngest. She'll be 5 here in about a month. So they keep us real busy, and they've been a huge blessing to us, as I'm sure yours are to you. I also started with my brother-in-law, whom you know very well. We started building some homes probably 9 years ago or so now. And we did that together for a good stretch. And Mason got real busy with his real job, as I call it, and decided to put home building on the back burner. And so last year, Emily and I started Howard Builders. So we are here for all of your custom home needs. Shout out to
Absolutely. If you need a home
Howard.
in the Longview area.
Absolutely.
So what
that's
department
it.
do you work for? I know, but
Yeah, sorry. I work for the Longview Fire Department. I've been on right at 18 and a half years now, and I currently serve as the captain on Truck 5 on C shift. So I've spent most of my time across town, and about 3 years ago, had an opportunity to move to the west side of town and get some time on a ladder, which was something that I hadn't done previously and have been really enjoying.
sweet. So for the guys that don't know where Longview is, tell us a little bit about like what's the size of your department, how many guys? I mean, I know you run ambulances. What's your shift schedule, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Longview is pretty much right in between Dallas, Texas, and Shreveport, Louisiana, on that I-20 corridor. We are a city of about 80,000 people. We have 8 fire stations. Currently, we are in 7 fire stations. One is being rebuilt, so we've combined 2 of them. But we have 7 engines, 3 trucks, 6 ambulances, and we're busy. We do run the medical stuff for the city of Longview. All of us are paramedics, and so that is definitely something that keeps us busy. We run the 4896 schedule. We started that January was a year, and I was a little nervous, a little reluctant to try, because at the time I was working at a real busy station. Well, at the time that we first started discussing it, and I thought, man, I just don't know how this is going to work. And now where I am, I didn't have any hesitation about me personally working the schedule, but I was still worried about some of the busier places, and they're enjoying it, and it's really done well with our department, and I think it's a good recruitment tool also.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if we ever get there. We're still at 2448, but it is what it is. Takes some time to change. The things firefighters hate the most are when they change and when they stay the same. So,
That's it. That's it. My favorite day in the 4896 schedule is when day 2 hits on a Sunday. So Sundays, we usually don't have anything to do. So we'll usually sleep in a little bit, get up, pop on some French toast and some bacon and eggs, and just have a pretty chill morning. And then most of us are usually watching some church at some point, either together or separately. And then, yeah, we just kind of get our day going from there. But yeah, that second day Sunday hits different, man. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. That's good to know. So I just want to know, I mean, tell me a little bit. You said you'd always want to be a firefighter. So I want to hear a little bit about that. And then, if you were a Christian before you came into the fire service, what did that look like your testimony?
Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but my testimony and the fire service for me, it's all really one story. So I'm just going to
Mhm.
I'm just gonna tell it. Back starting probably around 7th grade, I had a friend who would invite me to go to his church on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, and started going to this church with him on those times, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, and the Sunday school teachers were both Longview firemen. And at the time, I'm a young kid. I'm 12 years old, maybe pretty impressionable at that age. And one of the guys in particular was just kind of this larger than life guy. He drove a jacked up truck and wore starched up Wrangler jeans with a can of Copenhagen in the back pocket. And for a 12-year-old kid, I thought he was a big old mustache, and I just thought he was a super cool dude. Come to find out, he worked for the fire department. So this church on a typical day would have 30 to 40 people there. A very small church, but there were three of the adult male members were Longview firemen. And so
Mm.
as I started to go to this church, not only did I start to develop friends and really what became like a second family that were all of like mind and faith, I also started to hear a lot about the fire department. And so I'll start on my testimony in the 9th grade after going to church quite a bit at this place and hearing a lot of really great preaching and sound doctrine and things like that. I gave my life to the Lord in the 9th grade. And man, I look back, I teach youth at the church where we attend Mobberly Baptist Church in Longview.
Mhm.
And I've told my story a lot to young people, and I tell them I used to almost regret that I didn't have this radical conversion or this crazy story to go along with my salvation. I felt like I wanted a bigger
Mhm.
testimony. But I think as I matured as a Christian and you realize all of us, where God brought us from, it's a radical conversion, right? And none of us start
Absolutely.
out on higher ground or on a better foot than anybody else. So for any of us, we're all radically converted when we give our lives to
Absolutely.
Christ. But what I tell these teenagers is at a time in 9th grade when a lot of people were making choices of who they wanted to be and what they were going to be doing, especially on the weekends. Me and the guy that's been my best friend since this time period, and I'm sure we'll talk about him more, but
Mhm.
he and I and a couple other guys, they became my friends at school, the people that I went to church with, and a couple of us got saved around the same time. In 9th grade, we're carrying our Bibles to school with us, and we're
Mhm.
pulling those things out at opportunities when we get breaks in class, and we're reading the Bible when other kids are planning what they're going to be doing on Friday and Saturday night. And so I think God knew exactly what he was going to be doing because a lot of my very close friends prior to my giving my life to the Lord went down those paths that I'm referring to. And so I think
Mhm.
God intervened just at the right time. And he had a great plan for my life. And so, I'm not going to say I never got in trouble or did anything wrong my entire life. I think that'd be foolish to make that claim, but consistent service and
Mhm.
following after Christ, I think God has blessed me in ways that are tangible and that are identifiable as a direct result of, my choice to follow him and to be obedient to him. So that's
Yeah.
my testimony. And really, I teach young people at school or at church, and I really hope that resonates with them because I know that teenagers have so many things pulling them in so many
Mhm.
different directions. So for someone like me, I always tell them I don't feel like I'm too old, but I definitely know that I'm not as young as they are anymore. But hopefully, someone that's not too far from their age that can kind of tell them hey, there's reasons to follow the Lord and there's reasons to obey and to trust. And, hopefully that is impactful for them in their lives. Um, to branch off from the same story, this best friend and I decided, probably around that same time, 8th grade, we want to be firemen. So
Yeah.
we kind of looked up to and I don't want to say idolized, but we really looked up to these guys at our church who were great Christian men. We saw that, at church, but they were also firemen. And so that was something that from early on, I want to work for the Longview Fire Department. And I had no
Mhm.
idea what that would entail or what that meant early on. Later found out you had to be a paramedic, and I had
Mhm.
no idea what that was about, but started doing some ride-alongs and realized like, hey man, this is a really interesting job that it's never the same thing. It's very different. It's very high speed, and it was just something that I've always been drawn to. And honestly, I can't imagine doing anything different, and I don't know what I would do if I had to do something different.
I guess you'd be building homes.
Yeah, I could be building homes again. Yeah, thanks. Shout out Howard Builders.
Yeah, no, I like that though. I like the part of your testimony we were talking about. It felt like you didn't have a crazy story, but the thing is, no matter how quote unquote good we are, we still need Jesus. It doesn't matter if we're the cleanest of the clean, like when we have Christ as the standard, like we fall short. And so there's no need for a big conversion story. I think we kind of overemphasize this huge transformation, and obviously there's power in that. God uses all that stuff for his good, but
That's
there's
right.
also something to be said about someone that leads just a great Christian life and chooses the path they want to go, and it really, it's a testimony too to just being surrounded by the right people. I think I was lucky enough around the same time that the connection between me and you is the twins, so Madison and Mason. I got involved with them at ninth grade, and so, I'm going into high school, and you have that choice to make, what do I want to be doing on the weekends? I was playing football and stuff kind of like you, but I had those guys and they took me under their wing. And our version of, debauchery was midnight Whataburger. So I
Yeah,
laughed about
that's
that.
it.
We had good times and we stayed out of trouble. We were dumb kids every once in a while, but we didn't get in any crazy trouble, and that's a blessing. Honestly, it really is. Especially when you go into something like this realm, like these days, you've got to do all the background checks and all this stuff, and it's just getting harder and harder to find that job. And if you have a past, it's not saying you can't get the job, but it is hard. And so it's really cool for one that you saw the purpose that you had, you saw that you wanted to be a firefighter, and you made the right choices to make sure that that was something that you could do. So I applaud that, and I think that's awesome. And yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that. So going into, you knew you want to be a firefighter. Where did you go to fire school? Did you do it through Longview or did you do it somewhere else?
Yeah, so I went immediately out of high school. You talked about football. I was the place
Mm,
kicker in at Longview High School, and
mhm.
was able to get some recognition from East Texas Baptist University down the road in
Yep.
Marshall. And so they wanted me to come kick for them for a little bit, and so I went and did that. And man, honestly, it was a great place to be and all that, but the excitement surrounding the football program was a little different than
Yeah.
Longview Lobos high school football.
A little bit.
So it was a little bit of a letdown to go from one environment to that. But
Mhm.
also my best friend, his name's Kerry. We'll just quit referencing
Yeah.
him as the friend. And, Kerry Fletcher. Kerry was already started paramedic school at Kilgore College there in Longview, and so
Mhm.
I saw him getting his clinicals in and doing things like that. And man, I was ready to get started. So I left ETBU after a year, came back and started
Mhm.
paramedic school. Had another one of my very close friends decide to, from the same church, decide to jump in with us, Ryan Nicholson. And so he and I finished paramedic school together, one semester behind Kerry. My last day of paramedic school, I took my final exam, and then I was late to the fire academy. That was the first day of fire academy.
Mm.
Kerry had already been hired and with Longview, so he was going as an employee. He had, you know, his tuition paid, and he was getting paid to be there. And I, on the other hand, was not being paid. We lived very different lives during those 3 months. I bummed a lot of rides from him and whatnot when the fuel tank was low.
Right.
But finished fire academy there in Kilgore, I think somewhere around August, and started with the fire department with the Longview Fire Department in November that same year. So I was blessed, man. I had a very short period between the fire academy and the fire department. During that time, Ryan Nicholson and I worked together for a company testing fire hose and fire extinguishers and
Mhm.
things like that. So always done something that's been kind of fire related. Really since that was the decision to pursue that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So tell me a little bit why. I mean, my story a little bit, like you've been a reference for both my places. So I started in Marshall and went to Conroe where I'm at now. But tell me a little bit about the culture in Longview. Like, why have you decided to stay there that long? Why is it your home department?
Yeah. So, first of all, it is my home department. It's literally where I work. It's all I've ever known. And it's all I've ever wanted to do. But to be quite honest, man, Longview Fire Department, and of course, I'm speaking from a position of probably some personal bias, but Longview Fire Department is the best fire department you're going to find in East
Mhm.
Texas. We're not in the Metroplex, and we can't pay you like the Metroplex does. But I think Kurt Isaacson down in Florida talks about Escambia County where he works. He says, we will pay you in fires. And I
Mhm.
think the unique thing about the Longview Fire Department is, man, we get quite a bit of firework. We operate as paramedics on a pretty high level. And
Mhm.
then the other big draw for me became, after a few years, all the specialties that we have and things that you can pursue. So if you're into fighting wildfires, we got guys right now in Childress, Texas that are doing
Yep.
that. They've been to
Yep.
California, they've been all over the country. If you're into water rescue, we got guys that do that and high angle and hazmat. If you want to be a police officer, we've got guys that are arson investigators that are peace officers. And so there's such a variety of things that we have to offer. And I think being the bigger department in East Texas, that kind of
Yeah.
makes us the hub for those things. But also, man, the culture you mentioned at our department, as far as tactically speaking, we've seen a big culture shift. I'm going to say 8 or 9 years, and it could
Mhm.
be more or less, but in the last, let's say 8 years, we've seen a huge shift from, search it was a box to be checked on the
Mhm.
agenda for every fire, but man, now it's a priority. And I think the
Yep.
internet has a lot to do with it, right? We got
Yep.
podcasts and we've got conferences popping up, and the fire service world is so much smaller than it used to be. And guys are realizing, a cliche is you don't know what you don't know. And I
Yep.
was one of those guys, man, until I started reading and then I got into some podcasts and getting around other people. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think
Mhm.
that kind of our blinders are off now, and we're really
Yep.
taking off in that regard. But another interesting thing in culture, one of my battalion chiefs on my shift, his name's Tommy Daniel. He's the most senior man on the fire department. So he's got 30 some odd years. And his dad was a Longview fireman before him. So he's been in Longview firehouses for years.
Yeah.
And he made a comment about our culture and said that he remembers coming into fire stations and seeing adult magazines laying around
Mm.
and things like that. And he said, nowadays we come in and you see Bibles and guys are
Mm.
maybe doing Bible studies together and things like that. And he said he has very, very definitely and tangibly seen that shift in our culture. And so, man, I say praise God for that. I think that's
Yeah.
a pretty incredible thing. And I was having a conversation with a guy at work the other day, and we were talking about, we'll probably hit on it later, but our department has been given some pretty large platforms over the last year
Mhm.
as far as
Yeah.
media coverage and things like that. And I think the guys that have found themselves on those platforms have used that to glorify God
Mhm.
for the way that he put us in those situations and saw us through them. And so, man, I think it's great. The culture at our department is moving in that direction also.
Yeah, it's a great place, and I mean, growing up in Longview, like I said, I did my ride-alongs with you. You were the first person I ever rode with. I think it was is it Sixes? Wasn't that where it was at? Off of Judson, or I can't remember what station it was, but
I would have figured it would be a Eastman Road at 2, but I don't remember. I
no, it was
remember
before
you
you were at
coming
twos.
out with me.
Yeah, but we
Okay.
so I mean, I always thought I was going to be at Longview. When I went to fire school and then got hired by Marshall, and they were going to send me through medic school, and then I was gonna, I was gonna jump over to Longview, just like most of the guys do. I mean, shout out to Trent and all them. I
Yeah.
mean, most of the guys end up coming to Longview. Like you said, it's the big brother department. It's the place you want to be. And I remember, I guess that would have been 6 years ago. I actually went through y'all's process and got the final call. And I'll say, but God, he had a different plan. At the time, I was
Yeah.
chasing a girl, so it was Amanda. It is my wife, so I at least have that to go for it.
Worked out.
But
Yeah.
that's how it worked. And but it's a great place. That's something I've always appreciated. Like you said, I mean, growing up around somewhere like Longview, you see they have a status and they have a reputation to uphold, and it's a great place to work. And so, like I said, at one point I figured that was where I was going to lend up or end up, but God had other plans. But it's definitely a great place to work. So for all you guys out there looking, Longview's, I
Come
think
on.
y'all are even hiring right now, aren't you?
Right now, you got to be a paramedic, but other than that, come
Yeah.
on, we'll put you to work.
Yeah. Sweet man. Well, let's move into a little bit more. I want to know. I mean, you've talked about it a lot here. I mean, it's obviously God is very prevalent in your life and in your service. But why do you think maybe that God has you in the fire service? And that's a broad question, but I'll let you take it.
Yeah, it can go a lot of ways with that. I tell people all the time. In fact, we had a kid riding with me just the other day who was looking at coming into the fire service. And I told him, we were telling him all the good about the job, but then there's also things that are difficult about the
Mhm.
job that we do. And I told him that, my answer is that God, I feel, has put this calling on my heart to serve in this capacity. And through that, I think He protects my heart. So, as far as like dealing with things that we deal with and seeing things that we see, I feel like that just kind of affirms God's calling on my heart, is that He's protecting my heart through the things that
Absolutely.
we see. But I think also, my one of my drivers the other day mentioned something. He said, "Man, I've noticed about you is you treat everyone the same." And what he meant was
Mm.
it could be a new kid coming in to do clinicals. It could be maybe one of the new guys that, everyone else may not really like, or it could be someone that everyone really likes. And he's like, you treat everyone like you're nice to everybody. And he's
Yeah.
like, that's to me, he's like, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, man, I want to show the love of Christ to everyone that I come across. And so that's the easiest way for me to figure out how to do that, is to start out by just being nice to them. Right. And then, I think too, being involved with one another as intimately as we are. We live with each other
Mhm.
a third of our lives. You hear about guys that are dealing with this or struggling with that,
Mhm.
and you have opportunities to speak to them, to give them advice, to pray with them. And those are all things that I've had the opportunities to do. Um,
Yeah.
Quite a few years ago, I had a guy come to me who was struggling with his marriage and
Mhm.
things that were going on in his marriage. And man, he sought me out for advice. We talked. I was pretty honest with him about some things, and we prayed. And to God's glory, they're still married and they're doing well.
Wow.
And I played a small
Amen.
part in that, right? And just giving him some advice and praying for him. It wasn't because of me that they're still together, but
Right.
what God did through them. But just having the opportunity to work in the lives of people, I think, has been great. And that's just the people in the firehouse. That doesn't include the
Right.
people that we come in contact with through our jobs on a regular basis.
Mhm.
So, the my how has God been a part of my role as a firefighter is He's had to be a part of all of it,
Mhm.
right? Because, in a very dangerous job, you want to be prayed up before you go do your job for the day. And now as a leader, I want to be prayed up before I'm making decisions and things like that. So it's also been really cool. The current crew that I'm on, man, we've got some really good Bible believing kingdom men,
Mm.
and we've been able to really have some great conversations, but also lean on each other.
Mhm.
We were in Kerrville for the event that happened down in there in July.
Yeah.
And there was a group of us we were there from the very beginning, and we had a chance to make a couple of rescues early on the
Mhm.
first day, but then some recoveries for the next few days. And man, I'm not gonna lie, it was very emotionally taxing those
Yeah.
first couple of days, and especially with the nature of the young girls, and we're coming across their
Mhm.
belongings and things. That's a story for another day, but I'm spent some time with one of my guys that day as we're paddling the river looking for people. That's what we did for 2 weeks. And we just got to talking about, how do you make sense of this, right? The God that sends the sunshine also sends the rain. And
Yeah.
so how does that intermingle with my thoughts and all these things of, why did this happen is basically what it came down to. God could have stopped it. Why didn't He stop it? All these things.
Mhm.
And, as we talked, I told him, working through it myself. And I said, I always come back to, I've had several times in my life where I asked these types of questions, losing a friend who was a young
Mhm.
person, things like that. And I always come back to Job,
Mm.
chapter 38, where God says to Job, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't misquote it. Where were you when I
Yeah.
laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you
Mm.
know, right? So
Yeah.
God's almost being sarcastic with the guy at this point.
Mhm.
But I always come back to that God is just, God is sovereign,
Mhm.
and God loves us more than we can possibly understand. And maybe it's not for me to know right now, but
Right.
it's through that I come to the realization that I can trust him. He's shown
Mhm.
me I can trust him. And so every time that question comes up, it gets a little bit easier maybe to come back to that final answer
Yeah.
of, hey, I'm just gonna trust God in this. I don't understand it and I don't really like it, but I'm gonna trust God in it. So, through being a Christian in the fire service, I think it's cool to have conversations like that with other believers who are experiencing the same
Mhm.
thing we're experiencing. We could go to a Sunday school class and talk to guys that work in business or blue collar jobs or whatever, but if they don't fully understand the things that we do, it's not the same conversation at the end of the day. They can still
Right.
be good conversations, but it's just a little different to really
Yeah.
talk to someone that's experienced what we have.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And I just want to take a minute to brag on you. I mean, it's one of those things. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Is I think you are a great example of people to follow. I mean, being a captain in Longview, like I said, I've pretty much every time I've made a decision considering the fire service, I feel like I've texted you, and you've always given me solid advice. And then whenever I bring up Longview Fire Department or someone else does, when they hear I'm from Longview, I throw out your name, and that, like, most people know you. And so whether you know them or not, you're making an impact and you're making a presence known. And I think that that impact is a good Christ example. And I love it, man. I love what you do, and I just appreciate who you are. I think you're what a firefighter should be. And so in a lot of ways, I've looked up to you. And so I appreciate that. But I'll get off my little rant there. But we'll move
I
on. We kind of
appreciate it.
talked about it a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about. You said there's been some high profile stuff that Longview's been a part of. So the most recent one, at least that I know of, was the balloon rescue. So 920 feet in the air. If you're not familiar with it, I'll try to link it in the description. But I wanted to ask. I mean, like you said, even with Kerrville. So how do you prepare for answering that call? So something like a once in a lifetime call, which y'all have been a part of, a couple of them. I mean, how do you prepare for that? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, first of all, let me not get any stolen valor here. The grabs that were made in Kerrville, I was not in the boat. I was definitely on the
Yeah.
squad and definitely had a front row seat to it. And the tower call, I was both feet planted firmly on the ground, holding a dry erase marker. So don't in any way let me take any of the credit for any of those rescues. But I was there. I brag on our department and our special operations team as often as I can. But honestly, we've had a lot of people in the history of our team, and currently our chief of training and special operations is his name is Steve Bankers, and he has really laid the groundwork for our water and rope training and just being drilling in the basics and repeating those things over and over again and until it's obviously second nature. Just yesterday we were on the river together in Oklahoma. We were doing some swiftwater boat operator training, and we finished all the objectives that we were supposed to do, and we get done and we think we're done, and it's been a long day and we got to drive home and everything. And he's like, yeah, and he's looking around, and I can tell he's looking. He's like, let's go try this and let's go do that, and just never being satisfied with where we are and always pushing to be better. And I think that mindset has pushed through the teams. And the once in a lifetime call, even the rope rescue on the tower, it was simple tasks that were
Mhm.
done in a very complex environment.
Yeah.
So that obviously made it a complex operation. But at the end of the day, they're just simple tasks. And so when you know your job so well, the simple task can be done even in difficult environments. I think that's how we've had success as an organization. But
Yeah.
been a really really cool thing to be a part of for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I'll link that in. So I'll probably put that on the description as well. But Longview started a new kind of social media page, and I saw the other day it was actually you talking. I don't know when it was, but y'all were on top of Vera Bank doing real world training. And so I'll say, I mean, that's one of the things I feel like is a difference maker. It's one thing to get in the bay and tying ropes and knots and stuff like that and pulling yourself up to the rafters. But when you're on the top of a building like that and you're getting out the Stokes basket and dropping people down, that kind of stuff, I feel like it makes a difference. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, for sure. We try to put ourselves in as real of an environment as we can. My driver always talks about real bullets. When you're playing with
Mhm.
real bullets, it makes a difference, and you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. On the water side, he refers to it as real bubbles, and so we
Yeah.
were playing with real bubbles yesterday. And yeah, the Vera Bank was just our last tour that we worked. That training had been in the works for about a month, and some of the guys that were up on the tower were giving me a hard time about that video. They said, "Man, you only gave us 2 weeks to bask in the glory of the deal, and then you swoop in and you're on top of the." Yeah, I
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, sorry about that." But yeah, so
Man,
shout
that's
out
good
to
stuff.
First Due News,
Mhm.
which is the Longview Fire Department's way of putting information out. And that could be live, usually not live, but footage from scenes, information about traffic shutdowns and things that would
Mhm.
affect citizen safety. But we have several guys in the department that are pretty heavy hitters in the social media world. Lance being one of them, firefighter
Yeah.
Fireman Lance. You've
Yep.
probably seen him with the fire department coffee, and a couple other guys that have done a lot in the social media world. John Velez and the
Yep.
Tailboard Mindset. So
Yep.
those guys are coming together and really just making it a really nice production and putting out some good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once again that just speaks to just the culture that y'all have and the kind of people that work there. Like, I've never talked to someone at Longview that didn't want to stay there. Every once in a while some things change, circumstances change, but that's one thing I always appreciated is everyone I reached out to, like, man, this is the place to be. And it's awesome. It's a great place. We'll move on. What is one thing? So this is kind of a hard question too, but looking at, you've got your years are getting up there. You're not old. I'm just saying you're close to where you
Mm.
can you're eligible
Uh,
for retirement. We'll put it that way. What is what's something you want to be known for when you retire?
yeah, so I thought about this one, and I think it's easy for our mind to go straight to, man, I want to be known for what I did on fire scenes, or
Mhm.
for being a good rescuer, and or being a good leader. And I hope that those things are thought of me, right? But one thing I've realized over the last few years is, I think early on in my career, up until probably the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, is I had a tendency to feel like, man, I've done this, I'm on the special operations team and this and that. And you kind of get a feeling like maybe you're more important than you are. And I've
Mhm.
realized that, man, there's guys all over this country that are firemen and paramedics and part of Texas Task Force, or do all these cool things. And I'm just another one of those. I'm not any better than anyone else in that regard. So my focus shifted a lot towards, um, who am I in Christ? And, I think that's easy to say on this podcast where we're expected to talk about how Christ works in our life. But, several years ago, I got into a little trouble at work and had to spend some time, I call it, in the penalty box.
Mhm.
So they moved me to a different station, a busy station, for 6 months. And I told the guys, I said, this is kind of when all this mindset for me changed, is that everyone's going to be looking at me to see how I handle this, right? Am I going to be mad? Am I going to lash out? And I want to go in and just, I want, the only thing they see is, I want them to see Jesus in me.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go in and have a good attitude. And I was able to do that in that circumstance. But so the long way of answering your question is, what's one thing you hope to be known for when you retire from the fire service? Man, I want people to say that guy was a Christ follower. Um,
Mhm.
and that's not to be taken lightly, and you've got to put in work to be known for that.
Right.
And I think most of us aren't putting in the work, to be, the goal is not for people to say that about me. The
Mhm.
goal is for me to show Jesus to people around me that may not have a relationship with him. And then that opens
Absolutely.
doors for conversations, right? So I've been blessed through my career to have an opportunity to speak to some people about their faith, and tell them about what Jesus has done for me. And I think having believability
Mhm.
really lends itself to credibility when it comes to
Mhm.
talking about someone about their faith, and maybe they need to make a radical change in their lives. And if they see that you are that guy, and that you're the real deal, it's easier for them to trust you and to have those conversations.
Absolutely, man. That's I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's one of those things that, no disrespect, but the minute that you leave the fire service, they're going to fill your spot with someone else. You know, they've got a test ready
Absolutely.
for you. They've got a list, and so one thing that will always stay is that impact that you made for Christ, and you know that spans generations. So it's like you said, if you talk to one person and that person talks to one person, and then you know you have that exponential growth at that point. One person can make a huge impact for the kingdom. I mean, we've seen that throughout the Bible, and I think that's what you're doing there. I mean, I think you've influenced more than one person. But that said, I mean, that's what it comes down to is making that impact. And I'm glad you said that. But I skipped one of the questions, but I think it rolls in good here. So I've got it's kind of a threefold, but it's three different questions. So, what advice would you give to the rookie? You know, someone looking into the fire service or rookie, and then the veteran.
Yeah, saw that, and I really just was able to do this last tour with this kid that rode out with us, this young man. What advice would I give? So, I have advice coming from a firefighter's perspective, and I have advice
Mhm.
coming from, a kingdom believer's perspective. But I think it all rolls into, I don't want to go too long on this answer, and I could go forever on
You're
this,
good,
but
man.
but
You're good.
my advice to someone new coming into the fire service is this job will give you everything you want, right? It'll
Mhm.
give you opportunities to go all over the country. It'll give you opportunities to make impacts in people's lives and to be on TV or podcasts and to travel all over the country doing, training and working. It'll give you a salary to raise your family, but this job will also take everything away from you. And so I've seen that happen in people's lives where
Mhm.
they let the things that they see and the things that they do, I say they let, but they jump on them and they jump on them quickly and it can be mentally taxing. So have a plan for that. Have a plan to deal with that, whether that's
Yeah.
someone to talk to, lean on your faith. That's been huge for me. But also, I think we had this conversation going back to our culture in an officers meeting one time about how it's easy to let the job take more of a priority in your life than it should. Right. And we
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I'm doing this for this job and we help people. And so, man, I can go be gone to this week long class and everything's fine. And, the example I used or what I said was sin doesn't leap on us, it creeps on us. Right. So
Mhm.
Satan isn't going to use something blatantly wrong to draw you away from your family because he knows that we know better for the most part. Right. So, hey, man, you want to come do some cocaine and make some bad choices? Hey, I know that's wrong. Right. But if it's, hey, man, what about this conference? And then what about doing this? And what about doing that?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, man, I'm focused on one thing, and that's being at all these different places. And maybe that's putting my thought and my effort and my identity in being a fireman rather
Mhm.
than my identity in as being in Christ and being a dad and a husband and all the things that he's called me to be. I have no doubt in my heart and my mind, God's called me to be a firefighter. But before that, God called me to be, or for hire to that, God's called me to be, a follower of Christ, a husband,
Mhm.
and a dad.
Amen.
And then we put firefighter there at the end. And that advice I would give to a rookie or to a veteran firefighter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of really the same advice. I took a cop out and just made it one answer, but I think that
No,
really
I like that.
covers it all. Yeah.
Yeah, sweet man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think like you said, it's good advice for the rookie or the veteran. A lot of times, I mean, we're seeing it now in the service more so guys that have been there 10, 15 years and they're going through this, you know, the rat race, they're on the wheel and they're just trying to get those certs, get that, go to those conferences and stuff like that. And they can't figure out why their life's not being fulfilled. They're like, they have the status, they have the certs, they have all that, and they just haven't figured it out, you know? And it's unfortunate our jobs, you know, our departments, they're going to keep sending us if we keep going, especially if we're doing a good job with it and putting on a
Mhm.
good face, you know. And so they're not ever going to tell you, hey, you need to slow down a little bit,
Right.
but God
Exactly.
will. And so it's definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, man, before we close out, I've got a couple quick shot questions for you. So I want to hear first fire. Tell me a little bit about your first fire that you remember.
Yes, I'm gonna make this two parts also. My first fire was I started out volunteering with West Harrison Fire Department.
Mhm.
And so, man, I was absolute. I call it Gungateer. I was volunteering with West Harrison. I was volunteering with the EMS service out in Harrison County. And I just wanted to be at all of it. So anyway, my first fire, I had zero business being anywhere near a hose line or a burning house, but there I was. And let me say this disclaimer is that West Harrison is strides further in training and standards than what they were then. But I just remember I grabbed this nozzle and I went to the front door, and all the front rooms in the house were involved, and covered porch, so it's really holding the heat in. And I'm standing there waiting for water for a good little while, and I'm getting hot, and it's like, man, this is really uncomfortable. But I didn't know what was too hot. I didn't know what it was supposed to feel like because I'd never been in a fire before in my life. So I'm like, well, man, I'm not gonna get off this porch. I'm gonna stay right here and wait for this water. And so I did, and I'm spraying from the door because I'm like, man, can I go in here? What? I have no idea. I literally had no idea what I was doing. So finally, somebody that did know what they were doing showed up and was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Let's go." So he, whips it in there, and I fall in behind him. But I ruined my jacket, the sleeve of my coat, my very first fire there in West Harrison. In Longview, it took me almost, I think it was right at 2 years. The fire chief we had at the time said, if you're on the ambulance, your job's not to fight fire.
Right.
So at the time I was working on the south side of Longview, we went to a lot of fires, and I watched all of them. And we got a different chief, and we finally got the green light, and it was like I'd be off or on a call and there'd be fires. And anyway, it finally happened for me. We were testing our bunker gear, doing our annual bunker gear testing down there at Station 3 in South Longview. And I had just pulled all my gear apart, and a house fire dropped in our district. And I'm like, you got to be joking me. Because at this point, I'm thinking I'm just snake bit. Like it's just not going to happen for me. I don't know what's going to happen. So they go, it's a working fire. And about a half hour later, I just started putting my gear back together, and another one drops in our same district. So I just jumped in the back of the ambulance, and I told the guy that was with me, I said, hey, I'm just going to ride back here. So I put on the liner, and then I put on the shell, and my coat, I think, was already pretty well together. So, I mean, it's just piecemeal together. I've got it on. I show up, and our fire investigator is fully bunked out, and he's holding a hose line. The first engine that showed up, all their gear was torn apart. So they couldn't go in, but they at least pulled a line, got water. And so I asked this fire investigator, I said, hey, man, you going to let me have that nozzle? And he said, not a chance. And so we went in, we fought fire. It was cool and fun and everything that I wanted it to be, but man, it just barely happened. It was a good story to tell at the end, but those were my first two fires for sure.
Very cool. And I got another one last one. So Firehouse is sometimes known for some pranks. Do you have a good prank that you either pulled or were a victim of?
Yeah. Man, I've been thinking on this all day. There's the classic zip tie on the drive shaft, right? Like that one never gets old, and it's hilarious to watch people fumble around with that one. So anyway, I couldn't come up with a single good one, but there was a bunch of little good ones. My buddy did a brake job at his house, and he brought one of his rotors, and there's another guy on our crew that's like his little brother, and he would stick it in his water rescue gear bag. He would just stick that brake rotor in there. And it took him a while to figure out why his bag was so heavy. So that one was really good. And then another one I thought of, not really a prank, but hilarious. I gave a lot of kudos to this guy. So we had an employee that was testing in Plano, and we all know Plano's paying big bucks, and he tested there, and I don't blame the guy. But everyone started to find out about it, and they were grilling him and giving him a hard time. Well, then we heard that 6 other guys were tested in Plano too, and so we're like, oh wow. So then we're all wondering, I wonder who those 6 guys are. Everybody's kind of the talk went away from this guy that tested to who are the other 6. So he finally worked with us one day, and I was like, hey man, who are those 6 other dudes? He's like, oh, I was the only one. He said, I made that up about the 6. So everybody quit talking about me testing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's smart.
Not really a prank, but hilarious. And I had to give him a shout out on.
That's pretty good, man. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate it. So we talked a little bit about that Longview Fire Department page. What was that name again?
So it's called First Due News, but it's just being pushed out through the Longview Fire Departments. I'm sure all their socials, Facebook,
Yeah.
and probably Instagram also.
Yeah. And I'll link that. And, if it's okay, I'll put your email on there if people want to reach out to maybe look into working at Longview or anything like that. But, man, I appreciate it. You're an inspiration to me. You're an inspiration to a lot of guys. So I appreciate the time. And, yeah, man, we'll see you next shift.
Hey, likewise on the flip side, man, I know what you're doing is probably overlooked and underappreciated, but man, there's a lot of value in it. So keep doing what you're doing, man, and I'm proud of you for doing it,
Appreciate it.
brother. Thanks
All
for having
right.
me.